Welcome everyone to the second part of the workshop for promotion and tenure for folks who do community-based research. Yesterday we focused on CVs. Today we're focusing on the foundations of how to start your dossier. My name is Max Liboiron. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a full professor at Memorial University. I sit on P&T committees and I do a lot of external writing for mostly Indigenous scientists, but other folks who do justice-oriented work. And I do community-based research, doing environmental monitoring with Nunatsiavut government mostly in an Inuit group. And I had published 0 things out of that research when I went up for both of my promotions and tenure. And I will, and then Rosie, you go next.
Good morning, Kela Hanuino. My name is Rosie Alegado. I am a Kanaka Uiwi Ilocano, living in my own homeland of Hawaii at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I am a full professor of Oceanography and director of the Ulana Ike Center of Excellence at Sea Grant. My work involves characterizing the microbiomes of Indigenous seascapes, and to that end, I work very much with communities to co-produce and co-design my field work. And I'll pass it to Arn. Or Letitia. I'll pass it to Letitia because she's on.
Sorry, I was pressing buttons. Here we go.
My name is Letitia. My pronouns are she and her, and it's a privilege for me to be joining you from the traditional ancestral Stolen territory, the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe in the line now commonly called Montreal in Quebec in Canada. Hello.
And Arn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arn Keeling. He, him are my pronouns. I'm a settler scholar working here at Memorial University, a colleague of Max's in the Department of Geography. My community-based research addresses the historical and contemporary encounters of Indigenous peoples, mostly in northern Canada, with large-scale extractive developments. And relevant to this discussion, I've been a head of department, sat around tables with other heads looking at different disciplines, P&T files, and of course have served in a mentorship role as head of faculty in our department, preparing their files, and of course sat on P&T committees when I was a regular faculty member, and I'll be doing that again in the fall. So
I forgot you're going to be on the P&T committee with me.
Yeah, I'm on 2 P&T committees this year because as a cross-appointed member of the Labrador campus, I'm helping out with that as well.
Awesome. You may be seeing ones from people in this room then. All right,
yes.
Great. All right, I'm going to see about unpinning all this stuff. Oh, that's more complicated than it had to be. There we go. Thanks everyone for your patience while I press the buttons. All right, so what we're going to do today, we've done introductions. I'm going to talk about the timeline. I'm going to give it's shorter than 20 minutes this time, sort of introduction to how to really nail in, or a technique for nailing in your work and the criteria for promotion and tenure in your unit. And then we'll go into breakout groups and work for an hour, workshopping your files, and the different team members that just introduced themselves will circulate between those working groups. And then just like yesterday, we'll end with a half-hour-ish of Q&A via the chat. We'll then take all the chats and Q&A from yesterday and today and combine it into a master document and update those for you. And I'll share a bit more about that at the very end. They'll be on the Indigenous Network website. It's the spoiler for that. Yep, so it's the overview, group work, resources. Ha, perfect. And just like last time, team members, if you want to add something, jump in, raise your hand, just speak, do a trumpet call, put it in the chat, all the different ways. Yes, and as Rosie said, in the breakout rooms, you will be starting with your institution's documents about criteria, no matter what those look like. And so you might want to take some time calling those up. All right, so, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm disorganized, but really it's just very hot out. All right, so there are more than 3 principles for P&T files, but here are 3 of them. Actually, it's sort of like 2.8. The first is that you must really belabor your promotion and tenure criteria. And when I say belabor, I mean like underline it, look up in dictionary.com what reputation means or whatever. Read them backwards and forwards, have them in a chart, make a mind map, like really belabor those, because that's what it comes down to, especially if you have a case that you're worried about making because you do community-based or justice-based research that might not be as legible. The second is that you do not, number 2, you do not just do a data dump. You're not like, here's an annotated CV. Here's everything I've ever done. You have to curate and use certain things that you've done. You have to highlight certain things, prioritize certain things, which means automatically you deprioritize other things. And then to exemplify the type of scholar you are and how you meet criteria. And then the third is making sure that you have evidence, that you show that you're meeting these things. You don't tell them, you don't say I'm an exceptional scholar, you show them you're an exceptional scholar through different techniques, qualitative, quantitative combinations, multiple different ways. You can't make an argument without evidence. So there are, of course, more principles than this. One of the files everyone got was the 8 maxims of P&T files. So there's also probably more than 8, but these are the nitty gritty of how you craft an argument through your promotion and tenure file. So we're going to go through some steps you might take to do some of this. So this is, you don't have to read this entire screenshot. It is a mouthful. This is a screenshot of Memorial University's criteria for promotion and tenure. It's a chunk of it. It's not the whole thing. And at Memorial University, we only have one for the entire university. We have a collective agreement because we have a great union. Other universities have ones for the university, and then for a unit, and then for a department, and then maybe you have an MO.
I think ours will be way at the end because
someone's
because we are of a lower class.
Everyone make sure you're muted, please, because we just heard all about someone something. All right, so, and Veronica, you can force mute people if they're, yeah, you're on it, perfect. So make sure that you look at these cascading, these sometimes cascading or nested criteria, and especially what their standing is. So, thanks, Rosie. So some are guidelines and some are required. Some are binding and some are extra, right? And then also what the cultures of those are. Ones that are extra actually not treated as extra, these sorts of things. So make sure you're aware of that, and you do that by talking to other people like your department head, other people who've gone through, that sort of thing. So here's some of MUN's, Memorial University's promotion and tenure language. I've got this beautiful lilac-y situation color and the blue color. The lilac-y situations are things like descriptions or weight, while the purple are ways to characterize, and the purple are things, actually they're all sort of descriptions. Different things that I'm going to focus on and pull out in my file. Basically the keywords. These are some of the keywords. And I'll get to that in a minute. The other thing that's really important here is, put my head in, right here, there is some institutional and binding language about how you can talk about unevenness or gaps or weaknesses, although you would never ever use that word in your file. So in ours it says, in addition, the faculty members' teaching load, in accordance with the clause in our collective agreement, access to research facilities and other available infrastructure shall be considered, which means they've just given you 3 ways to justify how you underperformed in certain ways. Do not call it underperforming. But for example, the way you would use this in a positive sense is I got a wet lab in my 3rd year. And I could do a time series of my research outputs. And in my 3rd year, they accelerated. And so I made the case saying I did not have research facilities or lab infrastructure for my first 2 years. So you can't count that as what my research looks like. You should start in year 3, because that's when I got this. And then I cited 1.14 point whatever to make the case for that. So in case I didn't get tenure and it had to go to arbitration, or I was, got in a fight with the university and we were in the little committees for it, I could point to this and sort of have a nice trail being like, no, the university supports me in this unevenness. Same as if you were on parental leave that the university granted, be like, the university granted this to me. This was, you know, so my employer gave this to me, so my employer cannot then penalize me for doing something it gave me. There's that. We mentioned this yesterday as well. Oh, no, just kidding. We still need my body ability. Here, there's a section of things that they talk about, factors that may be considered in P&T, but are not limited to the publication of books, monographs, and contributions to edited books, papers in both refereed and non-refereed journals. These are the headings in your CV, and these are the words you should use when you're describing your outputs in your narrative. So I don't know if a book and a monograph are different. I thought they were the same, but maybe there's a difference and you did a book instead of a monograph. Instead of calling it an edited monograph, call it an edited book. Seems small, but these in many ways are legal style documents, right? You're fulfilling a contract or not. And so you want to use the words of the contract. This is a special genre of writing. There you go, thank you. Letitia says a monograph is a solo authored book, and a book is a book, a thing with pages. Great. Yeah, so feeding the words back to them, I would often like bold the things, bold the terms, or put them in direct quotes with citations when they do come from these documents. I had a heavily cited package, but yes. So this is what you're going to start in your working groups or your breakout groups today, getting this document and doing this kind of underlining. And then you're going to say, oh, look, we all have the word quality, which is down here, or we all have the word originality, or we all have something like that. Let's talk about what that looks like. So that's going to be what you do in your breakout groups today. And then you have to exemplify what that looks like. So I've chosen one particular term, and that's professional growth. And there are many ways to talk about growth, professional growth. It can be an increase in number. It can be an increase in responsibility. It can be an increase in skills. It can be an increase in complexity. It can be an increase in depth, in breadth, there's a bunch of different ways to talk about it. And then you say, okay, what are different things that exemplify an increase in number? An increase in number of partners, in grant money, in research outputs, in supervisees, in number of committees, although I hope not, these sorts of things. Increase in responsibility, in your roles in grants, in advisory roles in service, in supervision. You go from being on committees to being to being head. You go from, right? Each of these have a different way to exemplify how you're doing them. But you don't just list them all, you curate them. So you have to make the case of what type of scholar you are by how you curate, how you're exemplifying professional growth. So if you're a community-based researcher, yes, you're going to want to mention the number of outputs and the number of grant money is what you have, but you're going to say, yes, I have increased these things, but what I've really increased is my number of partners and my responsibility in community-based advisory boards and the skills of, so you start to craft the type of scholar you are by what you choose to highlight to exemplify the criteria. Yeah. Yeah, those are the main, those are sort of there's more than 3 steps. You then put these in narratives, you put these in different things. Oh, I know, yes. Then you give evidence. Sorry, my slides are out of order. Then you give evidence. So let's say you're giving evidence of an increase in numbers of partner, but also you're making the case that you're growing through the complexity of those partners. I like a graph. You don't have to do graphs, but they're so charismatic in arguments and they summarize really well and your committees are tired. And so I like a good graph. And so this is a graph, it's a fake graph, it's nobody's graph, of the number of partners over each year in someone's P&T. Each type of partner gets a different color. So they start with 1 community partner. And then the next year they have then they have 2 community partners and an NGO partner. And then by year 3, they have 2 community partners, 2 NGO partners, and a media partner. So they can start to talk about how one begets the next or requires the next or leads to the next. There's an increase in number. There's a sort of iterative sort of move, and they can definitely talk about personal growth. Here's an example of what this stuff looks like qualitative in a nice sentence with citations, bolding of the right terms, right? Since 2020, my professional growth has focused on meeting end user research, because my university likes the word end user. You can always use right holders or whatever. Needs through collaborative partnerships require, so you have collaborative partnerships. Make the case that this is a skill and not of your expertise, and not like a facet of your personality or your race or something like that, or your gender, right? Which requires the development of advanced skills in facilitation and participatory, oh, I should say participatory budgeting, because that's what that says. And so CV section 5.2 is like the professional development section, like you've taken courses in them, or you have a certificate in them or something, to best serve increasingly complex projects. These skills have been recognized by external partners through invitations to serve on 3 advisory councils, 1, 2, and 3, and you can see sort of the development narrative coming back in where the years are there. And then that means that these councils, these skills, and the list of these partnerships should also be in the CV. So it is a package. It's a mutually reinforcing package. As Rosie has put in the chat, if we're looking at something like professional growth, you define professional and you define growth. Yes. So that's why growth looked like these 4 things, and you choose which one best characterizes your work. Especially if your increase in number isn't the strongest, because that's what a lot of committees will automatically think growth looks like. So if you say, so I think I've told you this example of, I was an external reader for someone who consistently did 2 peer-reviewed outputs a year. And that's a bar, that's fine. But over the years, the type of research outputs they put out exploded. Like they said, they did films, they did lawsuits, they did white papers, they did technical papers, they did expert reviews. And even though they didn't have a growth in the number of peer-reviewed publications, they had a massive increase in the complexity and number of community-based research or community-serving research outputs. And so I could make a case that this person's expertise was becoming honed and nuanced and sharp, even if it wasn't becoming large and bulbous, right? So I redefined growth and what professional growth was. And in that person's case, this was a geographer. I also went to the Association of American Geographers, which talks about how geographers have in our professional roles the duty, and they use the word duty, to serve the public. And so I redefined professional using the American Association of Geographer. So yeah, so again, you're going to define these, but you should also provide backup for how you're defining them. All right. Anything from the team about that part before I get into common errors and pitfalls?
Comment from Letitia. You talked about evidence. Is this something you're going to be saying a bit more about?
Yeah, so I mean, evidence is kind of what I mean by this. Like, this is evidence. This is a count. Counts are evidence. Counts over time, sexier evidence. Counts over time with categories, the best evidence. Quantitative. Qualitative, here's like the list of things. Here's the years, right? So that's evidence. I mean like data. I don't mean I'm great. No.
I'm just popping in the chat an incredibly long list that I pulled together of different types of evidence that I've seen people use to talk about the impact of their scholarly outputs beyond numbers of citations.
Yes, absolutely. And there's actually one of the handouts people got are called metrics and measures or something like this. And it is all about like different qualitative, quantitative ways to do that. Awesome. Okay, great. Anyone else from the core team?
I think that hit most of it. There was one question that maybe everyone wants to hear about media as partnership as opposed to knowledge mobilization. Do you
Right.
have specific examples of that, Max?
Yeah. So in this case, this made up case, I was drawing on an example of someone who was actually a collaborator with, I forget what the name, it was an independent media where they produced films together and news stories together. So again, because this is a legalish, it's contractual. Because it's a contractual document, when you say partner, you better frickin' mean partner the way the university means partner, which means you have an MOU or some kind of agreement, as opposed to like a collaboration because you have coffee. So yeah, good point. Rosie, anything you want to add?
No, I just wanted to plus one for now I can't even remember what I plus one before, but I guess I wanted to plus one on qualitative measures. If you have reviews from your papers or other kinds of like evaluations, scary to use teaching. Sometimes those students are really, really rotten, but sometimes you get good ones. So like pull those too. I guess what I would say is the norm. This was a question that came up a lot because folks wanted to see examples. And I think that it is possibly more useful to get examples from your home institutions. Like we can certainly review your dossiers, but the norm is, for better or worse, the norm of your home institution. So that's the best, that will suit you the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one more note on student evaluations. So one of the best things about Memorial University, in my opinion, is that we are not required to use student evaluations to provide evidence of teaching effectiveness. Evidence of teaching effectiveness is the university term, because the union brought to the university the fact that student evaluations are inherently sexist and racist, and used research to make that case, and the union won the case. And so we now have this little clause that says you have to prove your research about teaching effectiveness, but you don't have to use student evaluations. If you don't, you still have to prove it. And if you use any part of a student evaluation, you have to use the whole part. You don't get to like pick and choose. You're either all the way in or all the way out. And then the Canadian Association of University Teachers has this huge, like, it's not a pamphlet, it's like a booklet of all the different ways to show teaching effectiveness. And it's disappeared from the internet, but I went in the Wayback Machine and I found it, and I will send it to you all. Arn.
That's very interesting that the COT guidance has disappeared from the internet, because it is frequently mentioned. That is news to me in P&T guidance materials in our institution, because it is a very useful document. I absolutely agree. And I often have this conversation with colleagues and heads around the perils and pitfalls of using these problematic teaching. That wasn't what I was going to put my hand up for, but that's very interesting. I guess general guidance on that is whatever you do present, whether it's student evaluations or other metrics, try not to look like you're cherry picking too much. Because people, if you put some student evaluations in, you got to put all the student evaluations in. If you're documenting using other things, be complete and transparent about that. If anybody gets the sniff of cherry picking, then yeah, and there's so many ways to document teaching effectiveness. But my original point was, and further, because it's one that I wanted the full group to say, is that this is where the story element of your dossier comes in, right? You're really telling a story about growth. You're telling a story about advancement. You're telling a story about all these increases in kind, complexity, and impact. So lean into that. I think leaning into that, and like every good story, it has facts, or it has evocative moments. It has moments of transformation. It has pivot points, like Max mentioned. Oh, I got a lab and shabang, I went like rocket fuel into this other stratosphere. And you just wait, baby, because it's going to go way better. So lean into that, maybe not as flippantly as I just have, but I completely rewrote my research dossier for full professor, basically using a narrative format to tell my story, and people loved it. So.
Oh yeah, I just off of what Arn was saying, that was super helpful. Thanks for that. Really made me remember that the case for tenure and promotion is often the case for why they want to keep you around as well. And so kind of the prerequisite to writing the dossier and telling this, kind of drawing all of these things and putting together the story is spend some time, and we talked about this in some of the groups that I was with yesterday, is spend some time thinking about who are you, what is your, using academic speak, what is your mission? And then utilizing your journey. And oftentimes that can be painful. Like for me, I often am like, oh my God, this is like peak tender underbelly, because all these things I wanted to get done, I didn't necessarily get done. But that's really what you want to kind of like bring out is who are you to the university? Showcase your value, but your value as in like, I am valuable to myself, not necessarily like all of the value that I like bring to the university, if that makes any sense. It is important for you, for your readers to kind of understand who this person is who is putting in this application. And that really is a chance for you to define yourself through the achievements that you have done.
I will add a caveat to that note, which is that don't define yourself to the exclusion of university metrics. So I think that's something especially community-based and justice-oriented researchers push against. They're like, but what I do is not encapsulated by the universities. No one's freaking work is. We're not actually special. We're like a genre that is special, but that structural problem is not special. So definitely describe yourself as who you are in a way that dovetails like a beautiful wooden floor or piece of carpentry with how the university would understand that. And you can do extra, but definitely don't fall short. Yeah. So not using conventional methods. Yeah. All right. Anything else from the team? All right. I'm going to say a few things that both as a P&T member and as an outside reader, I see all the time, especially that are errors or mishaps that I think are very common for community-based researchers in particular. The first is something I've touched on a few times, and that's that, so community-based and justice-oriented researchers spend a lot of time fighting their institutions. And if you bring that energy into your P&T, as opposed to an energy that's like, how do I put these puzzle pieces together? I'm a master of translation. That's what I do. So how do I bring it to this sort of contractual language? There's a lot of extra angst, I think, and suffering that you probably don't need, but that's for a therapist, not for me. What's for me to say is that it usually means that people miss certain measures of success because they think automatically the university can't see them. So if you keep thinking your university is a jerk and it will never see these things and you don't show them to them, then that will absolutely be true. So just keep that in mind. The second we talked about a bit yesterday, which is that, and I definitely did this when I started, is I would put research in the service section of my CV. So same thing, if Arn can do it as well as you can do it, it is service. If only you can do it because of your skills, your expertise, your history, that's expertise. That goes in research. Another thing I see is people not giving what I call evidence. So saying like, I exemplify, or, I'm a great researcher. Here are my publications. That's a claim and some data sitting on the page, but they aren't acting like evidence. So you have to make the bridge. Like, I'm an excellent scholar, and here's how I show you that through publications, because this is what the publications mean, or this is where the publications are, or whatever. So that evidence package, not just like narrative over here and CV or data over there without the bridge. And as Arn has put in the chat, in geography, I've been resisting saying this actually because it's our pedagogical thing. All arguments have 4 parts: claim, I'm a great scholar; reason, because I do the best community-based research and I'm like pushing the boundaries of methodology; evidence, here are all my publications on methodology and my invitations into community advisory committees; and warrant. They all fit together as one set of arguments as opposed to 3 piles of things. So thank you, Arn, for for helping me geek out. The other thing is what I talked about, this data dump. Like, here's my list, but without prioritization, without curation, without putting it together in a narrative, and sacrificing clarity and organization to barfaroni. So I think I told this story last time, or maybe I told it in one of the breakout groups, is I was on a committee once, not our P&T committee, a different P&T committee for another university that needed more people. And 2 files came in. And one file was from someone who had a reputation as a really excellent researcher, but it was like very disorganized, to the point where there were like typos and stuff like that. And the second one was someone who wasn't well known, but the piece was so well organized. There were headings and subheadings and bolds and like summaries and like they both ended up getting tenure, but we had to like wrangle and basically do the first person's job for them. And if it had been a tired or a cranky or a adversarial committee, I don't know what would have happened. Well, the second person, the letters wrote themselves, pretty much. So organization and clarity is actually a big part of being legible in a P&T file, of all writing, but high stakes P&T file for sure. Big thing I get, as I do a lot of external reviews, and sometimes I don't know whether they're applying for promotion and tenure, promotion or tenure. They're going from assistant to associate, associate to full. They have their like supervisees, but not their departments or the universities. They say guest lecture and the course, but not the university. Don't forget that one of your primary audiences are people who don't know you and are not in your university. It's not just the committee, it's also your external readers. So make sure you give enough context so they know what's happening. Including things that might be disciplinary specific, because there's no guarantee your letter writers will be in your discipline if you have a very disciplinarily bounded department. And then not starting early enough. Oh yeah, and as Arn said, that's another reason to constantly cite your university's criteria. Your university is supposed to send out the criteria to the external letter writers, and sometimes they don't. Because that's happened to me, where I have to remind them, hey, can you please send me the criteria? They're like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't attach it, just attach the dossier. Yeah, so or they provide like the universities and the departments, but they don't tell me how they fit together or not, or how it takes priority. So like definitely you have to do that. And then not starting early enough, that's both in the sense of start collecting your alternatives to student evaluations early, that sort of stuff as early as you can in your career. But also give yourself enough minutes to write your piece. I wrote my first promotion and tenure. I drastically underestimated how much time it would be. I was actually on vacation, and I spent my entire vacation, like 9 hours a day, writing my T&T file for like a week beyond the week I had already spent. And I probably could have figured that out because this is like a major grant, and I know how long it takes to write a major grant, but it takes a lot of minutes to do this. Yeah. So yeah. All right. I think I see some very specific questions in the chat that I think are more for like the breakout groups. So we'll go to breakout groups next, and I will stop the recording.